This is Akshay Garkil, a partner and leader with in cyber with Grant Thornton Bharat. And I would like to thank CXO News essentially to give us this opportunity in running this panel on OT and IT convergence. Of course, security with the zero trust framework. As we've seen today, the world has going through a digital transformation in most of the spaces, most of the businesses, which include both the business, government, and also the entities of critical infrastructure and critical importance to infrastructure. We've also seen some of the success stories in terms of convenience, speed, accuracy, transparency of operations, and of course the transactions. We've seen an era where mechanics essentially in the form of, for example, steam power machines, to throughout the industrial revolution days in the 18th century to today's industry 4.0 and of course the web 3.0. We've also seen some of the solutions through advanced topics like IoT, connected devices, smart manufacturing, and so on and so forth, which are actually fueling the industrial growth today, right? So from that perspective, organizations who are using operational technology extensively have seen a value in terms of kind of converging both information technology and operational technology together to kind of fuel the mass digitalization wave that we so called in the global landscape today. We've seen that IT systems typically support the data-centric computing way, whereas the OT systems help in monitoring and controlling the device performances and so forth, right? We've also kind of seen that, for example, if you take some of the industrial examples, for example, oil and gas companies basically enable a fair bit of operational technology for monitoring the data remotely, optimizing the damage assessments, or even looking at the inventory monitoring and things like that. We've seen in the medical industry, we've seen sharing of patients' information in real time through biomedical devices, converting into information technology and so on and so forth, right? So fair bit of advantages of basically looking at the convergence. But while we talk about the advantages, of course, it comes with its own fair share of risk. And those risks, essentially, what we're here to discuss are the cybersecurity risk. From a cybersecurity perspective, we've seen organizations who've been taking very active efforts in terms of ensuring business continuity. Cyber attacks today have actually grown more we've seen the threat landscape with more complexities today. The threat actors are also getting more and more sophisticated. We've seen fair bit of infiltration and sabotage in operations, whether it is IT or OT, right? For some examples, we saw the Colonial Pipeline ransomware issue. We saw the Mumbai power grid issue. Stuxnet is obviously a very famous one, right? So with all of that, and of course, the other scare is the data breach from a personal identifiable information perspective as well. So when we see all of that, of course, we look at the context of zero trust. How does really the zero trust framework, come into picture? How does the zero trust framework really bring in the security controls, which essentially will be important to protect this convergence? And that is what we are here today to kind of discuss. And I'd like to invite my first panelist, Ambarish, to kind of share a perspective. And Ambarish, thanks for joining in. When you look at some kind of, my question to you, Ambarish, is that when you look at some kind of modern manufacturing, especially which entails a fair bit of automated assembly lines, which is kind of feeding into the design of the software or the inventory management, and also supporting some of the advanced controls like RPA, etc. What is your opinion in terms of organizations really trying to stitch all of these together, bringing them under a common security policy or a framework, and then entailing both the components from IT and OT as well, and then kind of culminating it within the common framework? So we'll be happy to hear your views on that.
Thanks, Akshay, and welcome everyone. So I'll just start with OT technology has been existing for many years because the manufacturer has been leveraging this. And OT is all about collection of hardware and software managing the industrial systems, right? Now, the problem in the OT world has been because uh, the way the IT system has grown in the uh, perspective of versions, update, etc. That doesn't happen in OT world. Okay, the major problem in the OT system is they are running on the very legacy operating systems. First thing. Second thing, all the policies which you design for the IT world doesn't apply there. There is problem of visibility. Okay. Third thing is that you cannot upgrade them very quickly because there are a lot of dependency on OEMs. OEMs cannot get the pace with the outside world. So you have to depend on those OEMs and the OEMs will take their own sweet time. So that is the problem area. Now, as you rightly said, today, most of the organizations want to leverage the power of digital transformation. Okay, why? Because there is a huge business opportunity. Okay, they want to leverage the digital technologies like cloud. You talked about RPA, you talked about IoT, you talked about smart manufacturing, etc., and data analytics. Because they have bunch of data, but organizations don't know how to use that data. Okay, they have seen these technologies are helping the newest organizations. You talk about today the new e-commerce businesses, cloud kitchens, delivery, you see the supply chain, how they are using the new technologies. They have seen that they use the new technology and where they are today. The business growth, just see the business growth. Okay. But digital transformation means to every organization a different meaning. Okay. Some of the organizations feel that they are going to digitize their hard copy. They feel that they are into a digital transformation journey. Okay. No. Majority of the organizations probably they get confused and some of the organizations are so today every organization at different stage of their digital transformation journey. Okay, because if you talk about old companies, okay, they have everything on prem. There is a reluctance to go to cloud. They don't know what will happen, etc. Right, and now suddenly they see there is an opportunity because last 2 years they have seen power of digital technologies. Okay, they have seen how this has transformed entire world. Okay, that's why they started running onto this journey. Now, once you get onto this digital transformation journey, you will face obvious challenges. One is operational challenges. Second thing, the skills. Third is the cyber security challenges. Okay. Now, suppose you want to take example of somebody want to migrate from on-prem to the cloud. Okay. Challenges will be exponential. We got to here to ensure that assessment becomes very thorough. Okay. The one is the operational assessment, like talk about platform, talk about network, talk about ecosystem, talk about database, where how they will work, etc. That operational in nature, right? But as a security professional, we need to understand how the security ecosystem is going to work, how this is working on-prem without compromising security. By looking at all angles from the regulatory and other aspects, if you are probably if there is something applicable to you. Okay. So once you are transforming, you need to ensure that cybersecurity is integral part of that journey. Okay. Now take an example of suppose some company is building a IoT product. Okay. You need to ensure that you do the thorough security assessment from chip to cloud. Okay. You have the firmware. You need to do a security assessment of that firmware. Who is developing it? How this is being developed? Is there any open ports, etc. Then you talk about mobile app, connectivity, infrastructure and website. You need to ensure that chip to cloud security assessment is done. Focus on defense in depth. Okay, so focus on security by design. Ensure that whatever the processes you are building, people, process and technology, they are complementing each other rather than they are working in silos. Whatever the good technology you implement, it will fail. Okay, and we all believe in zero trust, right? Someday every organization will achieve that. So we need to be sure that whatever little step we are taking today, okay, how this is going to converge towards my zero trust journey, how this will add to that journey. Okay, because they know single technology you implement and you will achieve the zero trust. It is multi-year project, right? So we need to think about it and make sure that your OT and IT network there is a air gap because certain things you cannot remediate those risks in OT world because you know for the obvious reasons. So you need to build certain secondary controls, look at review because the visibility is the biggest problem in the OT world. We put a lot of focus on IT, but we forget about OT if you are handling the manufacturing world. So these are my initial thoughts. I'll look forward to hear from the other panelists.
No, I think brilliant thoughts, and you spoke about operations assessment, you spoke about chip to cloud, mobile apps. How do you basically look at the interfaces of the hardware with the mobile apps? Of course, focus on defense and depth security by design and on the zero trust. So, with that, thank you so much for that, Amrish. With that, I think we also discussed about smart manufacturing. We discussed about biomedical as an example. But I think one of the examples which most of our audience would love to hear would be on connected cars, right? And I think that's the most hot topic today. You talk about green energy, we are talking about EV. So that's another dimension of looking at the cars. But I think from a more from a technology and OT/IT convergence perspective, I think connected cars is a great example. And my question here is to Inderjeet ji. When you look at the connected cars, right? Of course, it brings in a lot of advantages today. Where we are able to access information on the fly during our mobility, but at the same time, and then of course, making the cars a little smarter. But at the same time, there is obviously a kind of a risk associated with having the connected cars. We've seen some examples in Germany as well, where certain cars have got hacked and kind of made it accident prone. And these were a part of the test itself. But scientists, or maybe I would say the testers, were actually successful in terms of compromising the car. So from that perspective, what are your views? What are the cybersecurity controls, and how do you apply those cybersecurity controls in the smart manufacturing world when you look at telemetry or infotainment or kind of PLC equipments, gearbox assemblies, and so on and so forth?
So thank you very much. Thanks for having me here on the panel, and really wonderful discussion on the zero trust and IT OT. And the zero trust itself is like trust no one, and that's what the zero trust starts with. And when you look in from a convergence point of view, IT and OT, what we always see is the east-west traffic, which is amounting to almost 85%, which we are not monitoring through our firewalls. And it's only the northwest west traffic which we are all going about, firewalls, IPS, IDS, and all those things which we have as a security solutions. Now, with the convergence of IIoT coming in, industrial IoT devices, now this has made the landscape so huge, so vulnerable, right? So the OT networks today are equally vulnerable than we ever thought of earlier. Because while we talk of the air gap, those air gaps are really very difficult to clearly say that there's an air gap, because when you have IoT devices, you're connected to the cloud, okay? And it gives those kind of vulnerabilities. It's kind of, patch management, your app management, your API integration, right? Sensor manipulations, everything is possible using that. Now coming to the connected cars, because that's one application with pretty interesting application, and it's a very software intensive and very complex device and highly connected system. And if you look at the driverless car, when we talk of it, it's got so many sensors on board, and there are almost 70 to 100 embedded microcontrollers on board running millions of lines of code. So it's no more a mechanical car which we talk of, right? And whether it's your braking, your engine control, your steering, your airbags, your navigation system, they're all being controlled through different sensors, and they're all radars. And to make it more interactive, we have vehicle to vehicle communication, we have vehicle to infrastructure communication. These are all very vulnerable if you look at it, right? And any hacker who's there can exploit these vulnerabilities sitting right anywhere in any corner of the world. Say, for example, you have a connected car with the most highest, VIP, which can be hacked from anywhere across the world if it is, connected to all these systems, right? And it actually increases the attack surface, which is very large, and the broad attack surface is like every component is connected. So if you're able to get into any one of the component, right, you're into the system. Say, for example, if you compromise the infotainment system, it can, effectively give the attack vector where you're able to control the in-vehicle network altogether, right? And once the hackers, they gain a in-vehicle access of the car, they can control everything. Then you're just a mere dummy who's sitting like on the steering, and it can change the controls, it can change the acceleration, it can apply brakes, locking, unlocking the door. And in fact, I have like the example which I was telling the VIP, if he is there and if this is a connected car, they can lock the door and you cannot get out of it. And this is one of the cases which happened where, a VIP was locked because the car was being tracked through satellite, right? And the security attacks are not just limited to the disclosure of information here, right? They effectively affect the safety of the passengers who are there. And there's so many n number of examples what we are seeing today, where the Jeep was been taken over, the internet, like, right? Then there was like the vehicle which I told you, the VIP itself was kind of locked inside the car, right? Then Tesla infotainment system was contained a 4-year-old vulnerability it was having. It was kind of a bigger challenge with the address. So what do we really need to do? You need to have the complete, understanding of the attack surface, and you should also take care of the active and the passive attacks which can happen. Now there are different kind of active and passive attacks, because now all the technologies which we talk of, because you see, we have the radar technology, we are putting the sensor technology, we are putting IIoT which are there, we are having the 5G which is there, and we are also putting a cognitive intelligence onto it, right? So that you're able to immediately take a action. You have the prescriptive maintenance, you have the predictive maintenance, everything of the technology perspective we talk of in the technology landscape. It's all there. So they give a huge active and passive attacks, and that we need to take care of while we are getting to the security part of the connected cars, where you can ensure a connected secure access, secure storage, secure keys, secure diagnostics. Your key management becomes pretty important because it's a software key now. The auditing and logging which are there. So your tempering protection, your machine security. So all those things become so very important when we talk of a connected car, right? So I'll stop here because of the paucity of time. I like other speakers to speak as well.
So, I just had one counter question to this in the GG before we move to the next one. And this is more on when you mentioned about the attack surface, right? One is to basically understand the anatomy of the in-network of the car. Is there anything that you would like to propose or suggest at the time when the car goes on the shop floors to basically look at the security by design aspects?
Yes. So there are lots of auditing and the privacy controls which are to be there, right? So that there is no vulnerability which is being injected whenever it goes for the maintenance, right? A small vulnerability into the car when it goes for maintenance, it may not be evident at that particular point in time, but can play havoc when it's on the highway running at 120 miles per hour, right? So
Right.
so in effect, the maintenance of the car becomes very important, because that's a point where anybody can get into that vehicle. So it's just like getting into a data center. Just imagine that, right? So if you give access to the data center, so your complete thing is gone. So it's a moving data center now, right? And everything which is there has to be secured, starting from your key management. Okay. So
Right.
the maintenance of the car becomes equally very important.
Sure. Sure. Now, interesting to see how cyber, compromise to cyber postures were actually compromising they were actually compromising businesses, they were compromising the assets, and now actually they're compromising human life. So, very interesting to see that. And I'll move to the next topic, and I'll request this question to Nitin Parashar. So, Nitin, basically, if you could throw some light in terms of how zero trust policies could essentially help, better manage the security considerations of organizations mostly in the telecom devices space. And of course, in the age of a wide range of apps which are being curated. So when you talk about telecom, it's no longer voice. It's all about value added services, right? So from that standpoint, how do you basically look at this convergence? What are the security standards that you would recommend more of a high level in terms of, looking at whether it is any of the IT assets or these are handsets, or for that matter, even the core applications which kind of kind of control the environment both from the telecom side and also from the IT side. Over to you, Nitin.
Thanks, Akshay. Uh, hi all, hi everyone. Akshay, I think we all are moving. We are talking about digital transformation. We are moving to hybrid cloud infrastructure, right? So with this digital transformation and cloud infrastructure that we are moving to, it is absolutely changing the way all the industries do business nowadays, right? So relying on those days when we used to rely on a official network perimeter, those are gone now. I mean, if you talk about security, if you talk about network, we need to adapt to cloud, we need to adapt to mobile, we need to adapt to every global need that is there, right? And every organization now is also adjusting to their business models where they are trying to offer services to the customers with new digital experience, with SaaS coming in picture, right? So the need and want while also enabling a global workforce. This has actually has to be accelerated because digital transformation journey is now accelerated, right? So organizations have thousands of, I mean, we all are connected globally from different places, and that is how organizations have moved they are connecting from home computers. It's outside your own IT department's control, right? You did talk about PII also. We never thought about it earlier, right? Data privacy is now talk of the town, of course. Resources are spread across the globe. So it becomes very difficult for everybody to quickly, connect quickly and then be secure also, right? So because we have been relying on our traditional on-premise infrastructure, employees now we have moved to employees' home environment, which are more vulnerable to compromise, of course, uh, putting the business at risk. We need to understand that, right? We also need to look at that things become more complicated now because many enterprises are currently operating with a patchwork of security solution and tools with poor integration, which is also leading to a lot of manual work, manual task, right? They lack context, they lack insight, and our people are putting in a lot of manual efforts, and now because the control is not effective, there's a rise in data breach, increase in global regulation have made predicting networks difficult. So I think it has to be a mix of not just a handset or application. We have to look at probably a wider level where applications, users, and devices all need fast and secure access to data so much that the entire industry of security and tools and architecture has been built to protect it, right? So I think that's where zero trust, when we talk about zero trust, uh, like somebody said, trust nothing, trust nobody. I think that is what comes in picture because if you talk about zero touch, it is not a technology. For me, it is a mindset. It is a process that we need to inculcate because that is the only way we will be able to prevent data breaches and contain lateral movement using application micro segmentation. Because I think somebody mentioned about getting on a possible lateral attack. So I think when we talked about connected cars, somebody getting into one segment and then easily able to, elevate the privilege and getting onto something which is lateral. So we need to be capable to easily expand security protection across multiple computing. We need to look at, containerized environments independent of underlying infrastructure. We need to have a complete visibility to users, devices, components, and of course, workloads across environment, identifying what is running and how are we enforcing the policies which are required. We surely need to look at something that helps us to continuously monitor, detect, and respond to signs of compromise. So continuous threat detection is very, very important. We need to have we need to ensure about consistent user experience also, because we can't really so while we need to look at zero trust and the security, we can't really compromise on user experience because that is important. We need to look at reducing full-time manual hours and architectural complexity that we have to a better unified security architecture, which makes life easy for everybody. Right. So these are some benefits I think that zero trust brings in. It definitely brings in enhanced security by using tools, platforms that can include IAM, that can include your multi-factor authentication, XDRs, which can be used for extensive detection and response. It also brings in, I think, a side benefit of it would be simplifying the security architecture and improved user experience, because that is equally important. And adapting to the remote work and cloud adoption, because everybody during this pandemic, I think, has learned and will continue. This model, of course, might go on to hybrid. We plan to work from offices also, but we need to understand what it has brought in at the table. So I'm sure this can bring a lot of benefits to not just the telecom, but all the industries that are being there.
Right. I think, fantastic points made, and thank you so much for that, Nitin. You spoke about not looking at the users and devices in isolation, but doing a complete mix and seeing, how do you kind of work on the apps, the users and the devices, basically, collating together. You spoke about micro segmentation, and of course, today, if you look at, the within India, you look at the Unicorn Club. There are a lot of micro segmentation organizations who are basically entering into the Unicorn Club. So I wouldn't, agree more. I mean, I would definitely agree a lot on what you just mentioned. Then, of course, some very good points on containerized environments, complete visibility to users in terms of user actions and what they've been doing, continuous threat detection, reducing manual hours and getting unified security architecture across the board, cloud adoption in terms of adaptability. Just one counter question to that, a very quick one, and I'll just request 30 seconds of view from your end on that, is when you talk about continuous user threat detection, do you think the end user handsets also come under the purview of end user detection?
Of course, why not? I mean, with the way we are moving, I mean, we move on the road and we did talk about connected cars, right? So why not? I mean, it does. Of course, we need to look at that also.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for that. I'll move to my next question, and I'll request Pradipta to kind of step in for this one. And Pradipta, my question here is on critical infrastructure, right? So today, we've seen the entire globe kind of witnessing cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, right from nuclear plants to power grids. And even transmission lines. We've also seen certain train networks also getting kind of hacked. So and then of course, while I do appreciate and understand that a lot of countries, power grid corporations of a lot of countries or the central authorities from a electricity standpoint have been, coming up with various, cyber security guidelines. Very recently in India as well, the Central Electricity Authority has also mandated some companies to have a dedicated team on cyber and also to kind of have a mechanism in terms of a call tree or a mechanism to kind of handle these security incidents. So my question to you is, what have really been the challenges for power companies today, more so from an operational technology perspective, in terms of handling any cyber incidents, if any? And of course, what are the additional responsibilities you feel, has been entrusted by the government on power companies to kind of protect the operational technology assets, especially during these incidents?
Yeah, thanks, Akshay, giving me this opportunity to take up my thought about this OT and IT and the critical infrastructure, what you're talking about, and also like, the policy around and how we can control and protect those our national critical infrastructure or the business critical infrastructure in India and across the globe. So the point is the way we are moving towards the digitizations. Today, the IT and OT is not into the different island. It is a single island we can talk about, because the data, what we are going to be utilizing or warehousing and or also that IND and ML, the part of it we are enforcing those and to take maximum benefit of those data which is coming from that OT environment, whether it is the CNC, PLC, SCADA, control traffic, all those, like, there are a lot of information, a lot of data been generated. So we are wanted to take those data, in the meaningful way to have that optimization of those, either it is a productivity side of it, cost optimization side of it. We need to implement very long time. It has been talked about. It is more of the different island. Today the world is moving towards the digitization, digital transformations, where this critical infrastructure become a part of our connected or networked, or might be more of integrated with the IT today. So the point is today, if you look into that, business as well as the government agencies are always faced spike of the global cyber attacks during 2021 or might be in the 2022. It's happening every year. It is the graph is going high. Even though for 2020 to 2021, if you see it is 11%. Especially I'm talking about the critical infrastructure. The cyber attacks has been gone high in the 11% side of it. Having said that, if you're looking about the incident, of course, the incident is gone much beyond today. Some of the thing is reported, some certain things are not been reported. That is one of the challenges. But however, if you look into that commercial side of it, more than 5 billion dollar we have seen in the 2021 to be getting into on those critical infrastructure losses. And most of the cases, if you see the critical infrastructure, the weakest link you can say, whether it is a malware, ransomware, or might be the USB access, might be the VPN, or might be the password, which is the weakest password, or might be the firewall policy which has been not configured appropriately. So these are the key where key points where we have seen most of the critical infrastructure been compromised. If I talk about certain major outages or major incident which has happened, I'll start from the recent, which we have already highlighted here, the Colonial oil pipeline in the USA, where the ransomware been attacked, and in that place around 11,000 gas stations been completely out of out of operation. So why it is because of moral of, if you can say about there are group where they not only take out or the stealing the data, it is also they are wanted to impact those critical infrastructure. That is one of the recent example on the 2021, and the similar, if you can see the Israel water system, that is in 2020, it has been impacted completely on their ICS systems. So if you talk about before that, there is a Taiwan State Electricity Board where the CPC corporations is attacked through the RDP. It is a simple RDP has been exposed and it has been getting attacked. Similarly, we can see that solar wind. So this is what is happening across. So the point is coming to that, how it has happened. Of course, there is a we have the reconciliation, there is a weaponization, then delivery, then executions, then installation, then CNC, then your action comes to the picture. So definitely in this process, somewhere that control you have to be in place. So on that control, we have to have certain policy, and that which if you talk about India, definitely we have talking about moral of that moral of the National Information Infrastructure Protection Group, where the 24/7 they are working for that to protecting or giving the response to that. But there is a policy around it also. Then if you talk about the National Cyber Security Policy 2013, where it has been already highlighted, especially for the critical infrastructure to be monitored, it should be response, how we can take those up. So, but it is not that extensively mentioning for the certain the group or certain the business or certain kind of sector. But if you talk about the CISA, where we are talking about the cyber security and infrastructure security in the US, that's called CISA, where it is critical. There are 16 sectors been already party to it. So if you can see, that is one of reference for us to take it up. Then we have in India also, of course, we have the national, as I said, like National Cybersecurity Policy 2013, and today also we are talking about the GDPR, IT Act law, and lot of like even the data protection law. It is coming up. It is always coming up. It is developing, and very recently the data protection law has been already there at the Parliament for the approval. So soon it will be going to be published. Specifically, if you talk about for the energy sector or the transmission sector, definitely there are certain framework, there are certain like policies or like best practices are already available. If you talk about the NIST, there are 7628. It is for the smart grid. What is the best practices we can implement? So that is there in place. And NIST SP 882, how we can manage and control, what kind of control we can put it for the control systems. That is all the best practice and guideline also in place. So we can refer those guidelines, whether it is a CISA or might be NIST or might be the national security policy, what we have, cyber security policies. Those are the policy around to ensure that like we are into the right place and the right track to take those controls and implement those or enforce those into our energy sector, or not only energy sector, you can take up the all critical sector, whether it is public or private. It is important for us. And talk, yeah. Yeah, talking about that again, like if you see the 56% of like energy and utility sector reported for the attack, whether they have reported, some of parties are not reported, and some parties are caused by the data breach, not been like operationality shut down, but data breaches happen. So 56% people have, or industries or companies have already faced certain issues or the compromises to the cybersecurity attacks. So that is what is moral of I can tell you about, and moral of, if you see that cybersecurity attacks, whether it is critical infrastructure and other, around like $6 trillion have been already been gone through the cyber crime and cyber attacks. Those are the losses it is there. So as an organization, as a state, we need to have that right policy in place, and that policy should be implemented in ground level. It's not like to have the policies and just check the mark, or the compliances are to be met only for the auditing purpose. Not that case we can talk about it. Practically it should be implemented at the ground. However, there might be certain challenges, but if you have proper governance in structure and the controls are building up in the phased manner, I think this is not impossible, because you are protecting to the nations.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Pradipta. I think great views and fantastic perspective on various industry standards which are already pre-written. You spoke about NIST, then you spoke about IT Act, you spoke about some of the controls, cybersecurity controls defined by the Power Grid Central Electricity Authority, and then of course you gave very good examples on the impact and also what could be the specific root causes. For example, RDP, a simple RDP basically was used as a channel to kind of compromise. So thank you so much. I think Amrish, you have a view. We are running short on time, so Amrish, if you can just share about maybe a 60-70 seconds view, and then we put the next question.
Yeah, so aligned to what Pradipta says. See, traditionally, most of the organizations have invested in a lot of things on the protection part. Okay, if we talk about niche cybersecurity framework, it talks about identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And since they have invested a lot of resources on protection, if the protection fails, they are flat, because they have not thought about identify, respond, and recover. That way, I'm saying that for the benefit of everybody, that we need to look at where are your investors are going, where you're going to identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Make sure that you have right representation and right technology at the right place, so that even if you see, even if you apply best of the technology, you may have a bad day. But how quickly you are standing up, like your incident response, your those things, how well rehearsed, how strong they are, that will prove your metal. That will prove that you invested in the right technology across the board.
Sure. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate. And I'll move to my next question, and that's the last question for the discussion of this session. And this question is essentially to Deepak. So Deepak, coming from the background in Microsoft, just wanted to kind of get a view from your end. in terms of more on the incident management and also, the monitoring side of the aspects here on the convergence piece. We've seen that a lot of attacks have, multifold impact to various environments depending on their line of business. And, we've also seen that, what is really important is resilience and of course a very strong response mechanism, and just taking a cue from where Ambarish left off. So, a lot of organizations today are moving towards the cloud or have already moved towards the cloud. Some of the organizations who are under the purview of heavy regulations are also contemplating to move to the cloud in terms of their core business processes. Support processes are already on the cloud, right? So just wanted to get a view in terms of, when you talk about adoption of cloud from a storing and accessing perspective, especially when you look at organizations which are of critical, importance to the country, what are the necessary security checks? If you could just, throw some light on that, and then of course we have some more questions around these, so we'll kind of pick that up once we hear your initial views.
Thank you, Akshay. I might be lazy because I was the last one to compile a lot of things, so it's an opportunity for me. Forgive for that, but I'm also opportunistic because I was having a leverage to listen to most of it. Akshay, you can also contribute to seeing the industry perspective. I only have few viewpoints. Few are the facts which is very commonly came up. I wanted to highlight that before I get into the question. Number one is, I think the IT and OT convergence came because IT and OT journey was very different. IT is very advanced, OT is yet to come. IT is still, acknowledged by all the tech savvy things, whereas OT we are reserved by the legacy we live. IT is all about being promoting to the latest things. We talk about AI or doing the sensors or hybrid cloud computing. Akshay, what you asked just now, compared to OT. Now, why I'm putting this comparison on this call for audience later on is not that the OT was legacy, because OT was meant to be manufactured in a company in a region where I'm creating something out of a Honda car, just taking an example, or going with the country like India as a Maruti car, right? But today when I'm creating that, it is not you and me which are working. It is a humanoid, human and the robotics which combine together. And that is why the OT part needs to converge. So I'm trying to establish one fact. It does not matter where we are in the cloud or how the data centric comes into. There is an IT and OT convergence needs to work together. That's point number one. The IT and OT, when they converge, because of the legacy, the OT has to have a segregated environment to be looked from cybersecurity perspective. That's point number two I would like to highlight, because the type of challenges when we see the RPA or the robotics ecosystem, the manufacturing ecosystem to come to the IT, it required a different level of security perspective. The third part, which was most important, which you asked Akshay, is if you really see the landscape of the cyber attacks, right? Today the attacks are not on financial impact. It is not even the impact on the brand. It is not even to the impact of a power plant. It can be an impact onto humanity. So if I'm able to capture a power plant and I tweak a little bit of chemical instance, I'm going very practical. Inderjeet will vouch for it, right? That I can change a tuning of chemical, it can create a blast. It's a human impact. So what I'm trying to highlight is seeing that impact, it can do a financial losses. And what I'm trying to drive is it can be a nation state threat, right? So catering those things, the impact of what cloud companies are doing, it is, I don't want to name today how the environment, geopolitical and global aspects are going on. But you all can agree that if we get into a cloud mode, you can have a backup, disaster recovery, management planning, and most important, you can safeguard the human nature of having a critical infrastructure taken care of. What Ambarish also mentioned, Pradeepto highlighted about it. So first of all, we need to get into global consensus. So let's look into what is the global practices. Ambarish talked about, Pradeepto spoke about it. It can be NIST framework. Can it be part of the region? Answer is yes. Can we get into any of the framework which is called National Cyber Security Framework? Answer is yes. Can we look into something called Data Security Privacy Framework for India? It is good. And then it is most important is, should we look into critical infra as segregated? As an individual opinion, I would say we should look into critical infra security as a separate aspect. But it has to have the topic which is called convergence on top of it, Akshay. Just to conclude that point, that let's look into as to converge it, look into the tools and technology which can be adopted. Cloud is the mode to get into it, but that's not the only answer.
Sure.
The answer is, can we converge quickly into that, Akshay?
Yeah, I think very valid point. While you said that cloud may not be the only answer, but of course cloud is also one of the answers. And while organizations really focus from a business standpoint in converging IT/OT to kind of get the best benefit in terms of go to market, and also kind of customer satisfaction and so on and so forth, depending on what line of business they are in, they leave the rest to the cloud service provider in terms of making sure that all the risk may be still accountable for the organization, but the risk is transferred in some way to the cloud service provider in terms of looking at disaster recovery, business continuity, crisis management, and so on and so forth. Now, my point here is that let's take one step forward here, Deepak, and talk about the security operations, especially the threat monitoring, right? And when we look at threat monitoring, we're seeing a huge trend of virtual SOC. We're seeing a huge trend of SOC on the cloud. So what are you a proponent of, applying this same control and extending it to this convergence mechanism as well? If so, then if you could help us with some examples of what could be some good or leading practices in this area, which will kind of help our audience to also understand some of the best practices that they could apply.
This is great point. I mean, that's what I said, that when we speak about cloud and representing a cloud company, rather I would on this call say we are a security company, taking that privilege to say that as a platform organization. For a minute, I would like to park cloud and I would like to talk about SOC, a security operations center. Akshay, you rightly mentioned, it is all about use cases. So if I'm securing, Pradipto can highlight that, Ambarish, Inderjeet, Nitin, you can highlight that. If I'm talking about industry, then the security operations and their events is all about industry specific case scenarios. That is the first thing I'll put as a benchmark, not what cloud wants to do or on-premises wants to do. Second, you cannot control any attack, whether it is ransomware, whether it is a malware, or even a smallest attack, if you do not have a holistic log analysis. Today, when we do SOC analysis, it is a noise of threat intelligence which we collect whether that attack happens. Have you seen the attacks which has happened, like Neckers virus, Colonial Pipeline, PTI, amplifications? If you go back and check the history where it all started, it was all basics of what is today's topic called zero trust. So Akshay, I would like to highlight that the operations of SOC needs to have a regulatory compliance aspect as well through a zero trust approach. Everybody talked about it. I would also like to put my 2 cents. Zero trust is not a technology. It's not a process. It's a mindset. And more importantly, technically, it's a framework. If I have to define, I will define zero trust is never trust, always verify. Inside, outside, I will test Akshay, Akshay will test Deepak, Deepak will test Nitin, Nitin will test Ambarish, inside, outside. That's what I wanted to highlight. Second, assume you are in the breach state. That's the point number 2 of zero trust. Assume breach. That means water flood has come. I'm already in the a droning stage. What should I do? That's where, Akshay, when you said in the SOC, it is not about threat intel. Am I prepared for crisis management? The point you were highlighting is a very, very crisp point. If I do not have a crisis management plan, because I'm bound to be breached, sorry to say, but I'm bound to be breached, even as Microsoft. Do I have a crisis management plan to respond to Ambarish or Pradeep that within 30 seconds, I'm going to take care of it? Do I have that plan? And this applies to critical infrastructure a lot. That means in 1 hour, if I have a crisis management plan, maybe so likely I have impacted human life. I might have got a disruption of 1 hour of electricity, but I lost, the electricity, but I was able to save the human life. That's point number 2. The third part of zero trust is least privilege. Every CIO, Ambarish, you can count on that, Pradeep. So I'm taking your names frequently. Sorry for that. And Nitin, you can highlight that as well. Indrajit is on the side of consulting, so I'm not taking his name. Most of us customize our privileges, having more than what we are supposed to do. And this goes as a consumer as well, Akshay, right? So I might have my mobile with my access, which I'm not supposed to have, but I'm having it. So I get breached. And then I tell my bank I lost my money. And then bank tells me because you are not up to date. I mean, who is responsible for it? That's why in cloud, in SOC, what you asked, I'm giving that answer as well. This is a cloud natural model called shared responsibility model. What lies with you? What lies with me? What infrastructure, software as a service, or cloud as a service you are having? But in nutshell, it is all about the security operations center. The best practices is to conclude minimum security baseline lies with the devices or the application. If they are vulnerable, they are bound to get attacked. If it is attacked, do I have a crisis management plan? If the crisis management plan is there, am I informing CERT? Akshay, what you asked earlier, right? Am I informing? I think Pradeep, you mentioned that, right? Am I informing, critical infra or national secretariat that this is the attack has happened?
Basically, the call tree and
Call tree, exactly. The call tree. How
typically,
do
who
I
are the
inform them?
major components of the call tree, right from regulatory authorities to the country authority, and then of course the board and the chain of command within the organization.
Absolutely. Sorry for taking that time, but I thought it was important, Akshay.
No, absolutely important point you made. Very important. Pradipta ji, you have a point, and Ambarish also has a point. So
Yeah.
maybe 15-20 seconds each would be helpful.
So yeah, of course, what Mr. DEEPAK has highlighted, another panelist is already highlighted that today we need a effective and a smart monitoring. It is not even just correlate and logs are shipping and all those part. It should be a SOAR as a framework where we can think about, and we should have the faster mechanism, the least privilege, what most people are talking about, but practically it's not happening. So that is where we can talk about. And the point, most of the cases it is instead of the technology challenges, most of the people challenges as well and processes challenges. So that should be taken care of it. And the SOAR is the way forward, and that intelligent way we have to respond it. And every organization, as a nation or as a company or organization, we should have the incident response plan in place so that we know where and how and what we are going to do and when we are going to do. So that should be in place and defined with the role and responsibility.
Thank you so much. Thanks. I think
Thank you
great.
so much.
Great.
10 seconds.
Yeah.
So, see, even if Deepak said and Pradipta said, we must have a crisis management plan and incident response plan, but more important is how often we are practicing it, how often do cyber drill. We have seen majority of the time people don't know what they are supposed to do in that crisis scenario. People are running around. Okay, so roles of responsibility, if there is a practice and they are reviving and the plan is current, right? That's why you see in the hour of crisis, we say that call army, right? Why defense forces? Because they are ready. They are practicing their drill every day. They have plan A, plan B, and plan C. Okay, coming from the defense background, I can just correlate things little better. I think Indrajit sir also can vouch on that. That's why you see in the crisis, everyone thought about call army, right? Call Navy, Air Force, etc. Why? Because they practice it. Because that is more important.
Thank you so much. And in fact, I agree today, most of the organizations who are either a part of the national critical infrastructure importance or even some of the large organizations which are public listed have been practicing most of the wargaming exercises or simulation exercises. So totally agree with your perspective. Absolutely.
And one thing I would like to add here, while we are talking about the OT and everybody resonated the point of CERT India and CERT, the threat intelligence would be very important. Threat attribution would be very important, right? And knowing the system or the vulnerabilities in the network is pretty important. Just to give one point, Recorded Future last year told that there are APTs in 9 of the power grids in India. That was a kind of a really neck-shaking information what they had given. And this is the time when zero trust, of course, is one point, but threat intelligence and the CERT, very specific, like maybe a power cert, what we should have the fin certs, which are again most vulnerable sectors. The other certs, the thermal certs, the Cert India, smart cities, because those are also forming part of the critical infrastructure now. So the certs for the smart cities. So those kind of things are the future. The threat intelligence, threat attribution is the most important part which we need to take forward, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And I think, plethora of information. I have learned a lot today with all these, esteemed panelists. And thank you so much. And, as they say that, data is the new oil. And I think it should be, where it is moving towards is, how do we kind of business is going to continuously transform, and it's going to move into the transformation space, and change is going to be the only constant that we're going to see in business from the times to come. We are talking about our, India's economy to move to a $5 trillion economy by 2025. Now, if you look at that, how many more new organizations are going to come into place? We are looking at 200 odd unicorns basically getting established in the next 1 or 2 years. Apart from the ones which are already there, we are looking at organizations. We spoke about micro segmentation. That's a big area which is essentially coming up, and it's not only in the country but globally as well. We've been seeing a huge trend. We are also seeing a trend in the biomedical space, and we spoke about touching the human element. Of course, one was about an example that was given was on how you could impact the human life by making some changes to the power grid. There have been examples where large critical surgeries have been averted because of biomedical devices being hacked into, right? So various aspects, and I think as we move forward, cybersecurity essentially has become a part of the top 3 risk in a board conversation, and I won't be surprised if it becomes the top risk very soon. With that, I would like to thank the panelists for sharing wonderful, absolutely wonderful, insightful views. And I'm sure the audience essentially would also be beneficial in terms of what they've heard from the panelists today. Thank you so much for being a part of the panel, and thank you for your patience answering all the questions that I posted. So thank you once again.
For more updates from CXO TV, please like and subscribe to our channel.